Hey guys, I'm here doing a deck profile for my nubatama deck, post Reckless Rampage. The deck is actually really good. I'm gonna try and see if I can do a few play videos with some of my friends, but right now let's just get to a deck profile first. First I have one copy of Stealth Rogue of the Wintry Wind. That is my starter for the deck. Really good effect. It has the Afterimage ability, so if you have 6 or less cards in your hand by the end of the turn, when your opponent returns a bound card to their hand, you can move this to your hand. As such, its secondary ability is when this unit is placed onto the rear guard circle, your opponent chooses one of their bound cards and puts it into the drop zone, and then you can countercharge one. Definitely a really good starter. Alright. Next up, we have 4 heal triggers. You can run either this one or the new one. They're the only 2 heals in, well, Nubatama, but honestly, I like for this one because I like the art better. It's a bit more colorful, you know? And yeah, then we have the rest of the triggers, which are just all critical. Yeah, this deck you need a lot of crits. You don't really want to run draws because you don't want to miss them. So with the deck, you basically reduce your opponent's hand size so much that you need a lot of pressure. And so 12 criticals, yeah, that's pretty much customary. Alright, to grade 1s. Yeah, 4 Sentinel Perfect Arts. I only have one of this one and not 4 of the Veil. I want to get a 4th one, but honestly I like the lineup right now. This can actually help with guarding an important rear guard if need be. But yeah, definitely run the Unflippers. Good way to get more counterblast back. Then I run 2 Kataragitsu, or actually 4 Kataragitsu, don't know why I said 2 there. Yeah, he is the enabler for the deck. When you can start with him, he gets +2 grade. And when placed on rear, you reveal a grade 3, add a Shiranui to your hand. So a good way to get your good grade 3 you need. Then I run 4 copies of Dreadmaster. Definitely a good pressure card. If this card boosts an attack and it hits your Vanguard, if the cards in your hand is less than your opponent has to discard 1. Now it can use your counterblast, but otherwise it's just a really good pressure card. And it's either between this or the 8K Vanilla, and I definitely think Dreadmaster is a lot more use. And then I run 2 copies of Tempest Stealth Road Fuki. His ability was kind of messed up, so they errated it. So that you can, when he's on rear guard, you counterblast 1, move into the soul. In doing so, your opponent chooses a card in their hand and bind it. Definitely a good way to get an early bind in your opponent's hand to make sure the attack hits if need be. Next on the grade 2s, you need to run 4 copies of the Stealth Rogue of Nightfog, Miyabi. I only have 2 at the moment. I'm using the Afterimage Hollow right now, but you want to get 4 copies of this. Honestly, it doesn't really mess with the deck having these guys already, but yeah, just get 4 copies of this. Really good effect. When this unit attacks and it's boosted, you can pay the cost of CB1. It gets 3,000 power, and if the number of cards in your hand is less than your opponent, then you bind a card in your opponent's hand face down until end of turn. Yeah, really good attacking unit. Definitely can force your opponent to a bad spot. Then you run 4 copies of Tamahagane. Now, Tamagane is a really good unit. When he's placed on rear or van, you bind one of your opponent's rear guards, and that's very helpful for getting your starter back to your hand. So yeah, definitely recommend for that. Okay. And then I run 4 copies of Stealth Dragon Kokujo. Okay, not bad. Now on the deck, whenever a card is bound, it gets 2,000 power. Just imagine when you go into the big generator stride, your opponent only keeps 4 cards in hand, all the rest get bound, and for each one, he's going to get extra 2,000 power, so not very bad. I'm thinking of probably switching a few of them out for some 10Ks for ride targets, but I honestly really like this card. Yeah, this deck doesn't really run Afterimage because of the ruling of how it works, it's not very good. Next I run 3 copies of Kujikiri Kongo. He is the break ride for Nubatama, if you don't know what he does. If you're at limit break and you ride on top of him, Your Vanguard gains 10,000 power, and your opponent chooses a card from their hand and discard it, and another one and bind it. That's a really good ability for really weakening your opponent, especially late game. And then you have 4 copies of Shiranui, the one you start onto. Honestly, I mainly go into him in this deck, mainly because I love abusing his ability. When you start on top of him, you counterblast 1, choose one of your opponent's rear guards and bind it, and then your opponent discards 1 card from their hand. That is really good and really needed in Nubatama. Yeah, basically the main one you want to go into. Alright, and lastly onto the G-Zone. I run 2 copies of Gidatsuriken. He's the generic one that came out in the first collection. If his attack hits, your opponent discards 1. You know, good start of pressure. Then I also run 2 copies of Zaramuriken. If he hits, your opponent binds a card in their hand. In addition, if you have 3 or more units with after image on your field, then your opponent has to choose one of their bound cards and put it into the drop zone. Yeah, like I said, not really after image in the deck, but I like running him if I really need to. Like in situations where I need the pressure to bind a card. Next up in the deck, you run 2 copies of Ataga Lord. He's the one that personas himself. When he attacks, counterblast 1, flip up a copy of himself, and then your opponent chooses a card from their hand and binds it face down. The number of cards in your opponent's hand is 3 or less. He gets an extra critical. I will say the effect could have been better. You know, he only gets the critical if your opponent's already weakened. If you would have got the critical when he attacked and your opponent had 4 or more cards in hand, I think that would be a bit better, but honestly he's a bit underpowered. I still go into him quite a bit, but you don't really want to use him unless you need to. If you can't go into the main guy, which is 2 copies of Samuraken. And basically he's the best card in your deck in terms of final kill. Now his ability states that when he's placed on the Vanguard circle, counterblast 2, flip up any card in the G-Zone, doesn't have to be himself, and your opponent chooses 4 cards in their hand. They keep those and they bind the rest. So basically it's a good way to really weaken your opponent. And you say if you have a counterblast left, you can go into Shiranui and bind another card in their hand, making it only so they have 3 cards left in their hand to guard with for that turn. Yeah, definitely an amazing way to make sure you get your attacks through. He's basically Nubatama's best unit. So yeah, that has been this deck profile for the Nubatama deck post-Reckless Rampage. If you guys enjoyed, please make sure to like and subscribe, and I will see you later.